Alright, so you want to learn how to make your own kicks. I'll teach you how to do that today, but first, I recommend checking out my tutorial on 808s, as we'll be using a lot of the same techniques. In fact, you can even take one of your 808 sounds you made and just shorten it. But I know that's not quite what you're looking for, but to start, we need to make a very simple kick sound. So we're going to open a synthesizer. Just like with the 808 tutorial, you need a synth that can control the pitch envelope and a volume envelope, which most synthesizers do nowadays. So just like last time, I'm going to use Sytrus first, and if you'll remember, 808s are originally a kick sound, like a very simple kick sound, but a kick sound nonetheless. So we're basically going to start this the same way we did the 808. So a sine wave, we're going to bring it down 2 octaves, and then we're going to do a pitch envelope, and then just a simple volume envelope. And so that's all you need for like a super basic kick, right? Now, if you recall my 808 video, you can do the same thing with this kick as you did with like the more complex 808s, add all sorts of effects, but most effects aren't that pleasant on kicks. You generally want kicks to be entirely in mono, for example, so something like chorus or flanger and all that just go out the window. Distortion, EQ, and compression are going to be the most useful tools with kicks. But so you're probably asking, well, how do we make the kicks that we hear in our favorite music? Well, that depends on what music you listen to. For my next 3 examples, I'm going to make a kick with a sound that would be used for EDM, one that would be used for trap, and one that would be used for R&B. Each variation will teach you a little bit more about making your own kick, and you can combine the different techniques to make your own unique kicks. So for the EDM kick, I'm going to kind of imitate the Roland TR-909 kick. It's super popular in EDM. I'm not going to do it exactly. I'm just going to take like the 2 important elements from it that really distinguish it from other kicks. And so the first is we're actually going to have a longer tail. And the second is we're going to have an even higher pitch drop at the beginning, if that makes sense. There's a lot of ways to do this, but in Sytrus, you can increase the pitch envelope. So let's do it by, I don't know, maybe double. And then, so really what we'd be looking at is something like that would sound the same, but we'd have to bring it up an octave and it'll sound the same. Okay, but we want it to start from somewhere like there. And then we're going to do an even quicker pitch envelope at the top. And so that's pretty reminiscent of something you'd hear in EDM, like whether it's drum and bass or dubstep or house. You'll hear some sort of variation on that, basically. Another way to achieve the same effect is you could do FM modulation, which is really easy in Sytrus here. You would simply do a super short volume envelope on the oscillator that you're modulating the initial signal with. It has a different sound to it, but does a lot of the same effect. It has that really bright click at the beginning. And then you might want to pitch it down, even more. The exact note isn't as important with a kick as it would be with an 808. It matters slightly more with these kicks with a longer tail, but this should generally be good. But also, it's your kick, so you can do what you want with it. You can shorten it. To show you how you can do it with other synths, here I'm going to do it with Vital. So we already have a really basic kick here. Slightly longer tail. It doesn't sound exactly the same as the last one, but that's fine. If you wanted to copy the exact millisecond decay times, you could get like exact replicas of some of your favorite kicks. I never feel the need to do that, so I don't. Here's the basic first pitch envelope. We're going to do a second pitch envelope that's even shorter. So the first one already does 12 semitones. And then we add the next one, also at 12 semitones. Actually, we might even want to go higher. Let's see how high we can go with it. The higher you go, the shorter you want the pitch envelope, it seems. Ooh, that's an interesting sound, for EDM. And to show what strong compression could do on a kick like this is basically like OTT or something. And then I'm going to increase the release like all the way. Going to lower these. And so then this is basically the difference. It's very dependent on what you want at the time. And just like with the 808s, I would normally save these sounds as a sample and use them from a sampler rather than from the synthesizer itself. You don't have to. That's just what I do. Part of the reason is I really like the sound of like time stretching a sample. Here's a slightly different kick that I made using the same technique. I just didn't want to have to save a ton of super similar kicks to my PC. And then you could shorten it. Alright, so for the next kick, we're going to do like a trap kick. We're going to do it in Vital again. So we're going to start this the same, or mostly the same. You don't have to get it exact. Let's do 24. Shorten it. And then pitch it down. And then something that's sometimes done with trap drums is you actually increase the hold by a little bit. Not a ton, just a little bit. All right, and then what we're going to do next is we're going to add noise. So if you think about a real kick drum, you know, you have the thing that hits the drum. I think it's called like a beater. Well, so the drum makes the sound itself, but then also the beater makes a much more subtle sound. We kind of replicated that in the EDM kick with that second higher pitch envelope, but you can do like a slightly more realistic sound by using noise. So most synthesizers have a way of adding noise. Vital in particular, you can add like any samples. We're just going to use white noise. Since a ton of new synthesizers have white noise, it just makes sense. What we're going to do is we're going to start with like a volume envelope. So we just want a short little noise at the beginning, and then we're going to filter it. So if you listen closely, you can kind of hear that sound. We can also put an envelope on the filter. I don't know what I did here. I kind of broke it. It's actually still set to 24. Just ignore that. Anyway, so what's common with like a trap kick is distortion. And something useful we can do in Vital is we can actually put an envelope on the distortion. You know, and from there you could probably like EQ it if you want. Maybe bring out some of these mids more, you know, and just tweak all the different aspects. But this is essentially the sound you're looking for with the trap kick. It's quick and has like a lot more mid frequencies. Something commonly done with like trap kicks is that they'll get passed from like producer to producer, with like each producer making slightly different changes to it. And so you'll just have like layers and layers of distortion and compression and different volume envelopes and EQ and all sorts of different things going on. And you can even do that to like your own kick. So you can like save the sample, maybe put some distortion on the sample, filter out some high end, save that as a sample, then use like compression on the sample. Speaking of compression, I'm actually going to show you how to tighten up a kick sound with compression. We're just going to use a basic Rudy compressor. So that's how it sounds right now, the kick. The threshold, maybe minus 24. Increase the ratio quite a bit. Here it's already a lot tighter, but we're actually going to increase the attack. But you see, and that kind of tightens up the kick. And then distortion kind of does the opposite of like tightening up the kick. But then it brings out a lot of like higher frequencies, and you can actually combine the two. So then it's short, but then there's, you know, too many high frequencies now. So then you could filter it out. And so like trap kicks are just a lot of like combining these different elements until you get something that's hard, I guess. That's generally like the way trap producers kind of describe their sounds, as like hard, and it's something that you kind of have to like learn by ear. So we'll just kind of save that kick as a sample, open it back up. It's pretty common for trap drums to actually be set up to where they clip in the sample, which sounds kind of bad at first, but so then you can filter it down. You know, so I'm going to filter out some of the high end, and I'm going to cut out some of this area, I think. That sounds pretty good now. And then we'll just re-record it. And then you'll see, because of like the trick with the clipping, it has this kind of like shape where it's like almost like flat for a bit, which is really common with trap drums. That's also part of what increasing the hold time adds to that somewhat. But you know, like some of the different like post effects we did to it kind of changed that. So then we just clean it up, and there you have like a hard hitting trap kick. And so here you can really hear the difference between the EDM kick and the trap kick. You know, the EDM's good for like cutting through like a sub bass, and the trap kick's better for like cutting through 808s. Alright, so for the final example, we're going to go back to Citrus, I suppose. It doesn't really matter, but we're going to do like an R&B style kick. We're going to start it much like we normally do. You know, volume envelope, pitch envelope. And you know, with some types of R&B, that's already probably good enough. Some types of R&B like to use that really type of simple kick, but there's also like the more kind of like organic sounding R&B and like lo-fi R&B use something more like what we're going to make. So an important element is we're actually going to increase the attack time, give it a softer kick. You know, very subtly. You don't want to go crazy with it. And then we're going to add noise, quite a bit of noise actually. A lot more noise than the trap noise, but then we're gonna filter it. So we send that oscillator to the filter. The way Citrus works, you have to send the whole oscillator to the filter. You can't just filter the noise, because the noise is added to the oscillator. In the filter, what we want to do is make a envelope for the cut of the filter, basically. You know, we're gonna start with this shape. This is not the shape we're gonna end with, because obviously that does not sound right. We're gonna move this down, and we're gonna move this up. And then maybe add a slight amount of distortion. I'm really not sure how the wave shaper works here in Citrus. It's a little weird, but it is a way to add distortion. Okay, and so that's what the sound from Citrus sounds like. But then here we're going to do a lot with the EQ, most likely. I've come to notice that R&B kicks tend to have a lot more in this area between C3 and C4. So we're going to boost here. And that helps the kick tone come out a little more than the noise. So we're going to have slightly less sub bass relative to the other kicks. Not entirely sure why, I just know that tends to be the way to go with R&B kicks. So, you know, softer attack, more frequencies around here, maybe a bit more noise, and just a general like looser feel to it. Or that. And again, you can use a lot of the same techniques you used for the other kicks on this kick. So you can really mix and match the techniques based on what you want. You know, and then with R&B kicks, you tend to switch up the velocity quite a bit with them. So here's kind of like what all three kicks sound like in a row. To kind of give you an example of the differences between them. And then one last thing, a kick is basically just like the thump noise. So the same techniques you use to add a thump, you can also do it here. So you can turn a lot of samples that weren't designed to be kicks into kicks. You know, so here we're going to take some random sample. So we want kind of like a volume envelope like that. We're going to fade it out a bit. Pitch it down as much as we can. We're going to have to pitch it down more in the piano roll. I think that's probably good. And I'm going to use the envelope inside of it to just slightly increase the attack here so that it doesn't have that click. And then now let's look at it with EQ. So we have a lot of frequencies down here that are really unnecessary. Just make it muddy and cut about here maybe. And then we can maybe do the compressor trick. And so, I mean, that could already work as probably a basic kick. But then what makes it interesting is then layering that with one of the kicks you already have. So we're going to send these both to the same channel. We're going to reverse the polarity on them to check for phasing issues. I don't really hear any issues, but I'm just going to leave that one reversed. I'm going to level them out a bit. I'm just going to go by ear. I think I like that. And personally, I feel like adding distortion to kind of bring it together. Again, so now here's all our kicks together now. You can hear how they're all different. They're all going to have different like use cases. They're going to cut through different basses better than others, you know, and just bring like completely different energy to it. So using the right kick for the right song can be pretty important. And you know, you can combine the different techniques. Like you can maybe have like the increased attack time on like the R&B kick. You maybe do that to the EDM kick. I have no clue how it would turn out, but you could test it. Maybe you like the way it sounds, and if you do, then save it and use it. Like, that's basically what you're doing here is if you find a sound you like, save it and use it. From here, sound design gets a lot more tedious. It becomes a lot more trial and error, just experimenting. But there are some more things that I can go through. So, you know, I'm thinking hi-hats. Hi-hats should be pretty easy. I could probably do both like closed hi-hat and open hi-hat. Open hi-hats are a little bit more tricky. But I'll probably try to do them in the same video. Cymbals in general are tricky. And then snares. Snares aren't too difficult to get the basic sound down, but they're pretty difficult to get them sounding good. Claps shouldn't be too difficult. I could also probably go into like some tricks for like sub bass and maybe even pads. Some basic keys. I could really go into pretty much anything, but to varying levels. I could maybe even do like percussion, but the thing with percussion is it's kind of just like any noise you want sounds good. So I don't know. If y'all want me to do more tutorials like this, it's really dependent on what y'all are interested in. But yeah, so like the video if this helped you. Subscribe if you want more. It would help me if you let me know in the comments what specifically you'd want. How did I end the last video?